One of the biggest threats that Adolf Hitler faced during the Second World War was from resistance that emerged within Germany itself. One of the most notorious attempts on the Fuhrer of Germany's life was the July 20th plot, in which a bomb exploded inside of his Wolf's Lair headquarters. It was planted by Klaus von Stauffenberg, but following the failed plot, there was large-scale arrests inside of the Third Reich of anyone who was considered to have been a dissenter or have some sort of link to the plot. There were thousands of executions, and some were incredibly sadistic, and were even filmed so Hitler could watch them, to see that in his eyes, his brutal form of justice had prevailed, and had been administered. One man who was subjected to a horrifying execution was Erwin von Witzleben, a German Field Marshal who was linked to the plan to assassinate the leader of Nazi Germany, and in the plan he was designated to become the Commander-in-Chief of the Wehrmacht. However, things did not go to plan. Join us today as we look at the brutal execution of Erwin von Witzleben. Remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Erwin von Witzleben was born in Breslau on the 4th of December 1881. He was the son of a captain in the Prussian army, and he descended from a long line of military officers and members of the nobility. As a young man he was part of the Prussian cadets, and he studied inside a military academy near to Berlin, and he then joined the Grenadier Regiment Königs Wilhelm I, No. 7 in Silesia, as a lieutenant. But throughout the years he then gained a number of promotions. He was married and had a son and a daughter, and as the First World War broke out, he was involved in the conflict. He served to begin with as a brigade adjutant in the 19th Reserve Infantry Brigade, and he was then promoted to become the company chief of the Reserve Infantry Regiment No. 6 in October 1914. But he then became a battalion commander, and along with his unit he fought in Verdun and in Flanders. He wasn't shy from the battlefield, and was wounded and later awarded the Iron Cross First and Second Class, but then he was sent to General Staff Training following his injury, before he saw the war out as a First General Staff Officer of the 121st Division. But following the war, Germany had a number of severe conditions placed on it with regards to the military. This included the limitation of only 100,000 soldiers to serve inside of the Reichswehr, the new German army, to ensure it did not become too powerful. But Witzleben remained inside the military, and he became a company commander, and in 1923 was appointed as a major. He remained in the military before Hitler's seizure of control, and remained in very powerful positions, including becoming a colonel. But when Hitler did take control of the German state, Witzleben was transferred to become the Infantry Leader 6 in Hanover. He was made a Major General on the 1st of February 1934, and he then moved to Potsdam to become the commander of the 3rd Infantry Division. It was clear that he was trusted and a well-respected member of the German army, and Hitler, it's believed, also valued his skill. He was promoted to become a commanding general of the newly established Wehrmacht and the Army Corps III in Berlin in September 1935, before the next year he became a general of the infantry. But Erwin von Witzleben was not the most ardent and staunch Nazi. He was not a man who had links to the paramilitary Freikorps after the war. They eventually were swayed towards the Nazi cause, and even a year after Hitler seized control, Witzleben outlined his opposition to Hitler. He, along with other generals, demanded that there was an inquiry looking into a number of deaths following the Night of the Long Knives, the night where the SS purged the SA and carried out many executions and killings. But Hitler, sensing the discomfort he had for the Nazi cause, forced Witzleben into early retirement, but he was later recalled to military service when Hitler began to plan for the Second World War, and he was seen as a competent and skilled general, who would do more good for Germany than harm. However, he became part of a group of plotters known as the Erste Conspiracy, which included Colonel General Ludwig Beck, and even Chief of the Abwehr Wilhelm Canaris, who was scheming to overthrow Hitler early on to force a military coup, which would then avoid a Second World War beginning in a matter of years. They sensed that war would be on the horizon following the Sudetenland crisis, but the fact following the Munich conference Hitler was gifted land by other nations left the plotters rather shocked. Witzleben would have been an important part of the coup, as he would have commanded his units in Berlin. However, Witzleben in November 1938 was the Commander-in-Chief of Army Group II in Frankfurt, and he continued to be involved in plotting against Hitler and the Nazis. He'd even planned to consider a frontal assault on the Nazi headquarters and to seize Hitler. As the Second World War broke out with the invasion of Poland, Erwin von Witzleben was then a Colonel General and was in command of the First Army on the Western Front. Following the German invasion of France, he was involved in his forces breaking through the Maginot Line, and within 3 days his effective command of his men had forced a number of French divisions to surrender to the Wehrmacht. He was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, and then became a general Field Marshal, and Hitler was very impressed with his actions and command. He then became the Commander-in-Chief for the West, succeeding Gerd von Rundstedt, but he then left this position for health reasons, and some claim that he was forced to retire again after he was caught dissenting against the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union, and was critical of this. But as the Stauffenberg or the July 20th plot ramped up to assassinate Hitler once and for all, Witzleben was involved, and he was considered a man who was key to the plans to seize control of Germany. The plotters would try to blow Hitler up in a bomb plot, and they would appoint significant people involved in the plot into positions of power. Witzleben was to take over supreme command of the whole of the Wehrmacht and German army as the highest-ranking German officer, meaning he would then ultimately be in control of the war effort and the army's operations. When the plot was all organised and scheduled to go ahead, things went a little bit awry from Witzleben's perspective. As Stauffenberg was to place a bomb in the Wolf's Lair, Witzleben was to arrive at the Bendler Block in Berlin, where the headquarters of the plot would be located. But he turned up late, and as he arrived at 8 p.m, it was already clear that the coup had failed. He was angry at the failure, and knew how dangerous it was for him to be involved, and he returned then to the Oberkommando des Heers, the headquarters at Zürsen. But he then the next day was arrested at his country estate. He was outcasted by the Wehrmacht, and he was accused of treason. Erwin von Witzleben was part of the first group of conspirators to be brought in front of the court. He had been kept in rather brutal conditions, and had been interrogated by the Gestapo, and presumably tortured by them for information. Whilst inside of the courtroom he gave the Nazi salute to Roland Freisler, the judge who was presiding over the court. The judge would berate the defendants and scream and shout at them, and it was clear what would happen to them. On the 7th of August 1944, the same day as the trial began, Witzleben was sentenced to death, and when he spoke to the court, his final words were stated as, "You can turn us over to the executioner. In 3 months the outraged and tormented people will call you to account, and drag you through the filth in these streets alive." His trial was shown for the weekly TV newsreels, but Goebbels decided against releasing parts of it, as he did not want to draw attention to the plot. But Witzleben was sentenced to death quickly, and his execution was performed extremely swiftly also. It's believed that on the same day, or in the early morning of the 8th of August 1944, he was taken back to Plotzensee Prison in Berlin. Inside the prison there was a brick-built execution chamber inside of a courtyard, and there thousands of Nazi resistors or dissenters would be executed using the guillotine or by being hanged on a beam that was found in the chamber. Many people could be executed there within an hour, and some were hanged together on the beam. But Erwin von Witzleben's execution in particular was incredibly brutal. Hitler had given instruction to make sure that the people who tried to take his life in the conspiracy experienced the worst kind of execution. He also gave the order for the executions to be filmed so he could watch them back as he recovered from his grazes and wounds, and he would even watch the sadistic killings back in the comfort of his own home. He would allegedly watch them back a number of times. Erwin von Witzleben would have been led into an execution chamber, and he was to be hanged. As a military officer he should probably have faced the firing squad, but as he was deemed a traitor he was made to suffer. On the beam were a number of meat hooks, and also a thin hemp rope. The people who witnessed his execution described it as a piano wire. This was incredibly brutal, as piano wire is razor sharp, and if bodies were dropped from a height using it, it could lead to beheading, as it would slice through the neck. But it also caused blood to get blocked very quickly, and if a person was not dropped, they would be lowered slowly so that the wire would begin to suffocate them tightly. As the piano wire got tighter, blood would not flow, and the wire would sometimes cut down to the neck bones. It was incredibly painful, and an ordeal could be stopped and started to make sure the most suffering took place. Many Nazi officers, when this was done, would not even watch themselves, as it was too harrowing to see. Erwin von Witzleben was hanged inside Plotzensee Prison's execution chamber using piano wire, and his ordeal was carried out in front of the camera. Hitler then watched his back a number of times. Erwin von Witzleben was an influential and important German military general who was seen as a powerful and successful commander during the Second World War. But he was a man who was not happy with the politics of the Nazi Party, and he decided on a number of occasions to speak his mind about it. He was ultimately part of the Stauffenberg Plot, which, if it would have been successful, would have placed him in a significant amount of power. But as it failed, he faced the wrath of Hitler and the Nazi Party's justice, in which he was executed in a harrowing and haunting ordeal inside of Berlin's Plotzensee Prison. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.